Hey guys, what's up? It's iFlynn here, and in today's video, we're going to be learning how to get Steel Path ready. A lot of YouTube videos nowadays are basically, this is the best whatever build for Steel Path. A lot of players, they go and they copy these builds and they miss something or don't have something that's quite important to the functionality of the build. They load into a Steel Path mission and then they just keep on going down over and over and over again. Or maybe they end up dealing no damage because they're not priming an enemy because they don't understand something or something along those lines. Maybe they're missing an essential arcane such as Cascadia Flare, or maybe they're not applying enough heat procs. Literally anything could go wrong by just mimicking a build from YouTube and then not understanding it. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys the basically bare minimum builds that you need to do some of the more difficult Steel Path missions on the star chart. Okay, so first things first, you want to go ahead and pick up Rhino or Rhino Prime. You're going to have to invest a little bit of Forma, and that's going to get you a build that looks like this. So this is a high strength, high duration build. So it's quite a selfish build, but it's made to just buff up the amount of damage that you deal. Rhino's Roar ability is one of the best damage buffing abilities in the game, simply because it increases your damage in two different ways. It increases the base hit of your shots, and it also double dips on damage over time effects. So if you shoot an enemy, it's going to deal a certain amount of damage. Roar is going to buff that up, and then if it applies a bleed effect, so a slash proc or a heat proc or something along those lines, which deals damage over time, that damage over time damage is going to be amplified on top of the already amplified damage. Now this is really good for two reasons. Number one, it just increases our damage, which is brilliant. And number two, it actually increases our damage in a similar way to a mod that you see in a lot of build videos. So common mods that you see in build videos are usually Prime Bane, Expel, or Smite mods. These mods are really good as well because they basically do the exact same thing as Rhino's Roar. But here's the thing, you as a newer player or returning player or something along those lines, you're probably not going to have access to all of the Prime Bane mods. So we need to find a way to compensate for that. And that is simply just by using Rhino's Roar. If you understand math at all, you'll understand that too much of one type of buff is basically just going to grant you diminishing returns. So theoretically, you could increase your damage by throwing on mods that are similar to Serration that just say plus damage, but you're not making the most of your mod slots by doing that. So essentially, because we are running Rhino's Roar, and Rhino's Roar does the same thing as a Prime Bane, Smite, or Expel mod, we can go ahead and replace this for something like more crit chance or crit damage. So what I recommend running is the mod called Galvanized Scope over the Prime Beam mods on your primary weapons. Going back to the Rhino build, because we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, this is a high power strength, high power duration build, which is centered around just getting a really good cast of Rhino's Roar. It's also going to give us a really good Iron Skin as well. So Iron Skin scales with two different things. It scales with your power strength, and it also scales with your armor, and that's why we're running Steel Fiber as our defensive mod. So this is basically the bare minimum Rhino or Rhino Prime build that you can throw together to actually do Steel Path content. I've got an additional slot up here where you can run basically anything that you want. Now if you wanted to, you could go ahead and throw on this Ironclad Charge Augment mod, and this is going to give you more armor whenever you dash into enemies with Rhino's first ability, and a higher armor value basically means more Iron Skin, which makes you less likely to die. But if you're struggling with damage, another thing you can do is you can go ahead and you can take a Vault Warframe. So Vault is quite easy to craft. All you have to do is go to your clan's dojo, then go to the Tenno lab and purchase all the blueprints for him from there. You can go ahead and you can craft him, and you can go ahead and subsume him via the Helm system, and that's going to allow you to take his Shock ability, which is his first ability, and you can put that onto your Rhino. The Shock ability has an augment mod called Shock Trooper, which basically adds more damage to your weapon in the form of electric damage. So you could go ahead and throw that into your final slot to just increase your damage even more. That's if you have the augment mod. You can totally do this build without the augment mods as well, and just run anything you want in this flex slot. I just wanted more damage on this build because more damage is good, so that's why I opted for Shock Trooper. Now an important thing to note, if you're running Shock Trooper, it will actually merge with some of the elements on your weapons. It's not that big of a deal whenever it comes to the Naderic build that I'm going to be showing you guys today, because it has no elements, so it's just going to add bonus electric damage, which is nice. But on something such as our Spore Lacer, which is another another weapon that we're going to be talking about in today's video. It has viral and heat damage, and what's going to happen is that the electric damage from Shock Trooper is going to merge with the heat damage on our weapon, and it's going to make viral and radiation. Now, this isn't entirely a bad thing. It can be good in some circumstances where the enemies have alloy armor and they take bonus damage from radiation damage, but that is one of those nuanced cases where it really depends. In that case, you're playing against like these heavily armored enemies. You could go ahead and you could run corrosive heat on this weapon, and then you could have corrosive and radiation and shred those really high armored enemies. So that's just another option that you've got. All you have to do to turn this to a corrosive heat build is go ahead and throw Jolt over Frostbite. But if you don't have Jolt, you can go ahead and run the other electric mod, which is Convulsion. You will have to Forma one more time though, maybe 2 more times depending on the mods that you've got on. So you might be taking a look at this Naderic build that we've got going. So one, you get the Naderic from the new war quest, and if you're going to be doing Steel Path content, you've probably got that quest completed, so you probably have this weapon. We're running these galvanized mods here, and you get galvanized mods from doing arbitrations. So if you go to your navigation and you go ahead and you press on the alerts tab, you can see arbitrations right here, and as you play arbitrations, you're going to get this resource known as Vitus Essence. As you can see, what you want to do is come to any relay. You want to come to the Arbors of Hexus room and talk to this guy on the left, and he's going to show you basically all the things that you can buy for Vitus Essence. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, you can see all of these different galvanized mods. You want to pick up every single one of these before you even try to play Steel Path content. On a lot of primary weapon builds, you're running the mod called Split Chamber, and this gives you 90% multi-shot. There is a galvanized version of this mod, which at base gives you 80% multi-shot, but whenever you get a kill, you get a bonus 30% multi-shot for 20 seconds, and it stacks up to 5 times. So the galvanized chamber mod, even though at base it is worse than regular Split Chamber, as you get kills, it becomes far superior to the regular Split Chamber mod. It does cost more, so you need to Forma more. So this Naderic build is going to allow you to deal a big damage number up front, and then after the fact is going to deal a big bleed proc. The enemy is going to bleed to death. We've got Serration for base damage, Galvanized Chamber for scaling multi-shot, Galvanized Scope for even more crit chance on top of critical delay, and Vital Sense to amplify our crit damage, Hunter Munitions to apply a slash proc on critical hit, Speed Triggers so we can just shoot faster and land those perfect shots as much as we can, and then Galvanized Aptitude for even more status chance and damage. So if you have some way to apply more elements and stuff like that, Galvanized Aptitude is going to take your damage from being kind of meh to really good. Next up, I'm showing you guys a beginner Spore Lacer. Now you can get this extremely early. It's made up of the Spore Lacer Chamber, which you can get from Favor on Deimos, then the Deep Breath Looter, and the Haymaker Grip, which you can get from Rudzud on Fortuna. Getting all of the resources to build all of these different parts is quite easy, and like I said, you can get all of the parts really early as well. If you wanted to make it a little bit more optimal, you could go ahead and swap Deep Breath for Splat if you've got access to it. So as you can see, this is a pretty standard build on any secondary weapon, to be honest. And like mentioned beforehand, you can go ahead and swap that viral damage for corrosive damage if you really wanted to. Say for example, you're playing the Sanctum Steel Path missions, most of the enemies there take bonus damage from radiation damage, and they've got a lot of armor, so running corrosive and radiation in that scenario would be very beneficial. And another thing you can do, you can go ahead and swap out Bar Diffusion for Galvanized Diffusion, which is basically the same as the Split Chamber example that I showed you guys. Galvanized Diffusion is always going to be better than regular Bar Diffusion. So I went ahead and I threw that on. As you can see, my base numbers went down, but as we get kills in our mission, our damage is actually going to scale higher than if we were to just use the regular Bar Diffusion. And then last but not least, I'm using a very basic 2x heavy spam build on the Zorus. So you can totally ignore Discipline's merit. You can swap Amalgam Organ Shatter for regular Organ Shatter. Pressure Point and Killing Blow you're just going to get from the star chart. Sacrificial Steel you're going to get from completing the Sacrifice quest. Volatile Quick Return you're going to get from playing the star chart. Focus Energy is a Nightmare mod. Corrupt Charge is a Corrupted mod that you get from Corrupted Vaults. Then Shock and Touch is just a star chart mod. Pretty much all of the mods that I've showed you, you're just going to get from passively playing through the star chart. And then for your companion, I recommend picking up the Riga. You can get this little guy directly from the market. Just pick up his blueprint for credits and then craft him in your foundry. You want to try to mimic a build that looks like this. The bomb mods you can get from basically the animal people on the different open world areas. So one of them you get from the business, one of them you get from Sun, and the other one on Earth you get from Master something, I forget his name. Basically they are companion NPCs. Synth Deconstruct you get from Fortuna bounties, and then the rest are basically basically just standard Sentinel mods that you're going to get from the star chart. You can replace prime regen for regular regen. And what this little guy is going to do is he's going to go and spread a lot of viral and heat to all the enemies around. Go ahead and make sure that you've got the Verglass equipped and you're running a build on it that looks like this. You can replace the prime version of Shred for the regular version if you really want to. All those viral and heat procs are just going to make the enemies easier to kill. You might have noticed that I'm not running any Arcanes. I'm just assuming that you have no Arcanes for your Warframe. And we're not running any Arcanes on any of the weapons either, because a lot of the good Arcanes you actually get from Steel Path. Also, make sure to actually invest your focus into the different focus skill trees. So if you're struggling to sustain your energy, I recommend running Xeneric. If you're struggling to stay alive, I recommend focusing into Vazarin. And if you're struggling to deal damage, I recommend running Matarai. But honestly, with this build, with this loadout, none of those things should really be a problem. If you're wondering about energy sustain and health sustain, we're running Equilibrium on here. This is going to give you both health and energy anytime you pick up any type of orb. Equilibrium pairs very well with our companion because Synth Deconstruct says enemies injured by the companions have 25% chance to drop a health orb when killed. And then Duplex Bond, companion will clone itself each time you expend 100 energy. It'll give you up to 3 clones. Clones live for 30 seconds and can't use abilities, but their kills have a 50% chance of dropping energy orbs. So Sentinel plus Equilibrium means a lot of health and a lot of energy. So what I'm going to do for the sake of this video is I'm going to go ahead and run Corrosive and Radiation on my Spore Lacer instead of Viral Heat. And that's simply because the mission that I want to demonstrate this build in is Armistice in the Sanctum Anatomica. And this is the hardest disruption mission that is on the star chart. And we're going to use this sort of beginner build to just complete the mission. So let's just go ahead and jump right in. So if you're running Xeneric, you want to go ahead and cast your energy regen ability right now so you can regen some energy before you spawn in some of the enemies. What we need to do whenever we're playing Rhino is we want to find some enemies and then we want to go ahead and cast Iron Skin and let the enemies hit us if the dog would like to hit us. Okay, the dog didn't hit us because our Sentinel is just built different. But anyway, what we can do is we can go ahead and cast our Roar ability. And now, as you can see, we just kill enemies. So if you do happen to be running Volt's Shock ability with the Shock Trooper Augment, you can go ahead and hold down your ability. And as you can see up there in the top right hand corner, 244% bonus electric damage. And that's making my Spore Lacer deal both corrosive and radiation, which is just melting these enemies. And the build isn't anything special, to be honest. It's not even the optimal Spore Lacer. With this build, you're always going to have the energy to make sure that you've got your Iron Skin up, your Roar up, and your Shock Trooper up. And that's because of your Doriga just constantly giving you orbs and stuff. So what we're going to do, the real test is actually going to be taking down a Necromech. So we're going to go ahead and spawn one in now. You want to make sure that you have your Roar ability casted. You want to go ahead and shoot at the Necromech like so. And then just go ahead and shoot at it with the Naderic bow. You're eventually going to kill it. And as you can see, that was pretty easy. Granted, that was the Bone Widow version of the Necromech. Let's go ahead and try to get a Void Rig. Void Rigs players struggle with just a little bit more. And if you're really struggling, I know we don't have a lot of range on this build, but you can Rhino Stump enemies that get close to you. Like I said, we don't have a lot of range on this build. I think it's like a sub 10 meter Rhino Stump. But if you want to get close to an enemy, they just stun them. That's totally fine. Gonna go ahead and spawn in hopefully a Void Rig here. Make sure that my Roar is active. Okay, so here is a Void Rig. Make sure that my Shock Trooper is up. Just go ahead and spam the Spore Lacer on it, and as you can see, we deal a lot of damage. We can go and we can shoot the other side of him, shoot the arm, and he died quite quickly. We just went ahead and spawned in another Necromech, and they actually have the stronger Key Carrier buff on as well. I need to go ahead and recast my Iron Skin. We can maybe just stand, take a little bit of damage. Just keep on spamming our Spore Lacer at this guy. Just gonna keep on spamming my Spore Lacer at this guy. Make sure with the Void Rigs that you're aiming for the arms, because that's kind of their weak points. And they will eventually die like so, as long as you just keep on pounding them with the Spore Lacer and Naderic combo. And if you get overwhelmed with the amount of enemies, not that there's many here right now, but just go ahead, jump into the air, throw your Zorus, and then press your Alt Fire to make it explode. And a lot of the bad guys will just die around you. Remember, because the Zorus has base electric on it, Shock Trooper is really good for it. You're just increasing the damage even further. And Rhino's Roar helps with those electric damage over times. Let's go ahead and try out the Zorus on this Bone Widow that just spawned in. So just go ahead, throw it. It doesn't deal the most damage, but let's go ahead and prime it a little bit. And boom, it's dead. And that's pretty much it. We just completed the Disruption mission in the Sanctum Anatomica, Steel Path, Rhino, basically beginner build, and oh, look, an Acolyte. So Acolytes are going to maybe screw you over a little bit, but as you can see, all you have to do is sort of like jump around it, throw your Zorus at it. You can shoot it with your Spore Lacer if you want to. They're going to drop Arcanes, which are going to make you even stronger. We don't have any Arcanes equipped for this run, and by this point, you will have a lot of Arcanes from just killing Acolytes in the earlier Steel Path missions. But as you can see, we got secondary Deadhead there. But as you're playing the Steel Path for the first time, you're going to be killing those Acolyte enemies. You're going to be getting those Arcanes for your weapons. If you have an Arcane adapter for your weapons, you want to go ahead and throw them on. I definitely recommend investing them onto the Naderic, the Spore Lacer, and the Zorus. So even if you don't have a maxed out version of an Arcane, take the secondary Deadhead that we got as an example. Like, these are still going to buff up your damage. So it reads on precision headshot kill plus 20% damage for 24 seconds, stacks up to 3 times. But as you play, you're going to accumulate more and more and more. You need a total of 21 of a specific Arcane to get it to max rank, which is rank 5. And at rank 5, you get even more effects. So here it reads on precision headshot kill plus 120% damage for 24 seconds, stacks up to 3 times, and then plus 30% to headshot multiplier. So the laziest one, or the one that gives you the biggest bang for your buck, is secondary Merciless and primary Merciless. So it just reads on kill plus 30% damage for 4 seconds, stacks up to 12 times, and you also get additional 30% reload speed. This is the laziest because you don't need to like aim or anything like that, and you can also just use like your status effects, so your bleed damage effects and stuff like that, to stack up the Merciless Arcane procs. So for most players, I recommend just running secondary Merciless and primary Merciless on your weapons. Now these Arcanes, whenever they become maxed out, they give you the same type of damage as Serration. If you recall earlier, we were talking about how Roar allows you to replace the mod called Prime Beam mods or Primed Expel mods, whatever. If you recall earlier, we were talking about how the Roar ability allows you to replace Prime Beam mods, Prime Expel mods, and Prime Smite mods. Well, Primary Merciless basically does the same thing, but for Serration, because it's the same type of damage. Now, you don't always want to remove Serration. It just depends on the weapon that you're building and the build that you're going for. So on this build, for example, it might not be worth me removing Serration. Maybe I could swap to the primary Deadhead Arcane instead, or something different if there's something better out there. But on the Spore Lacer, as an example, I could definitely run secondary Merciless and then swap Hornet Strike out for something different. It just really depends what you've got. And honestly, guys, that's pretty much it. That's how you become Steel Path ready with as little as possible. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, as it helps the channel a lot. If you want to get early access to my videos, you can become a channel member by pressing the join button beneath this video for $5 a month. Or if you want early access to other cool resources and behind the scenes content, you can subscribe to my Patreon for less than $5 a month. Consider clicking on the video on screen, and I'll see you guys in the next one.